Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Threat Thursday. This week, we're looking at Ryuk, a ransomware that has been actively targeting healthcare and hospitals. The FBI even met with some healthcare providers last week, notifying that there's an imminent threat of this ransomware. As usual, we consume cyber threat intelligence. We bring in a special guest from CyberScoop, Sean Lyngaas, and we create an adversary emulation plan, run that plan, and share the plan in our community threats GitHub, which is the largest adversary emulation plan library publicly available. We hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Threat Thursday. My name is George Archies, and today we have Sean Lyngaas with us. How are you doing, Sean?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. So, Sean, you work with CyberScoop, right? And what do you do there?
I'm a senior reporter, and I cover all kinds of fun things, critical infrastructure first and foremost, how it tries to protect itself and how the bad guys go after it, focusing on industrial control systems, the health sector, election security, and much more.
All very topical at the moment, given that we're recording this the day after the US election. And just last week, the FBI was giving out some information to healthcare about various attacks that are occurring. So I saw that you wrote a couple of stories on that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing?
Sure. As many of you know, there's what the federal officials call an imminent cyber criminal threat to the healthcare sector. The attackers behind Ryuk or however you pronounce it, the prolific ransomware that often is used in big game hunting, going after big organizations. In this case, they appear to be going after fairly big hospitals. There were a number of hospitals that have reported computer security incidents in the last month or so, and for whatever reason, it appears the threat actors behind it have decided to really try to cash out at this moment. There's some speculation that it was in response to the Microsoft action against the threat actors behind TrickBot, which is, as you know, can lead to deployments of Ryuk. That may be the case. Whatever it is, it's a very serious time for the health sector, and so people are trying to raise their shields and protect themselves. And there's a lot going on in the country. There's a pandemic, there's the election, and obviously, but hospitals can't take their eye off the ball here. There's no sleeping on this threat. So there were several briefings that the FBI and DHS did with the health sector last week, and it's basically the goal is to make sure things are resilient and protect patient care. I think the understanding is that with this kind of attack group is well resourced and knows what they're doing in terms of at least getting on systems. The goal is to minimize the damage and be able to recover quickly. So that's the state of play. A lot's gone on in the last several days. I think because the election happened, we're kind of trying to juggle two balls there, and we're going to get a better sense of how the sector is dealing with the attacks probably in the coming days.
All right. And so let's break down the particular attack. I mean, you mentioned a cash out. So let's look at the objective that they're after, which is money. Most people know that Ryuk or however you pronounce it is a ransomware. Are they also stealing data? Are they doing extortion, or is it mostly the traditional encrypt everything and do a ransom note and get paid?
In this particular campaign, I haven't seen any threats of data dumping. Usually I'm monitoring some of these Tor websites where the ransomware gang will list their extortion victims and threaten to dump data. Ryuk does not, I don't think, have a traditional site. There's a related group that I think does have a victim shaming site, but not those behind Ryuk. But in this case, anyway, I haven't seen any exfiltration. Then again, of course, I'm not doing an incident response, so I don't really know, to be honest with you. But as you know, it's a growing problem with the 1-2 punch of encrypting, but before doing that, exfiltrating data, and it just sometimes they can demand 2 ransoms, just for the price of one breach. So that is a huge problem in a lot of sectors right now.
Yep. And then going back to the beginning, right? The initial access and then what they're doing, right? It's not just like gain access to one system and encrypt it. They're
Mhm.
actually doing lateral movement, right? What have you seen on that in that area?
Right. I think the initial vector here in terms of the targeting that's been going on of hospitals, and it has been targeting. It's not necessarily opportunistic. According to FireEye, this is a threat actor. I think they call them UN or UNC 1878, which is a new one for me, but it's an Eastern European supposedly criminal gang, and they have been behind some of the biggest, the most prolific Ryuk deployments in the last several months. Uh, I think it's even, spear phishing in this case, and then there has been some lateral movement on IT networks, and it's the key thing that I've noticed is the quick time that they've been deploying. Once they're on a system, it's only a matter of time before they encrypt the network, and that's obviously not encouraging. But the good news is here that in response to this threat, you have, and let's say unprecedented, but you have an unusual amount of threat intelligence that's being put out in the public. I did a Twitter thread the other day that caught on. I was glad to see. I just put out all of the data that I've seen threat intelligence companies and the feds put out on this threat actor and on Ryuk, because people, there's no point in holding it back right now. Everyone needs it. So there's been some great data out in the public domain, and hopefully that'll help people find compromises and mitigate them. I know I talked to someone who works in incident response. I believe it was last Friday. Time blurs this year, especially, but last Friday, who was actively trying to contact victims where they saw Ryuk already deployed or in the you saw the initial foothold. So the more data that's out there and the more urgency that can be brought to it, the better. This is a sector with the health sector is pretty under resourced even in normal times in terms of cybersecurity, but now with the pandemic, it's got worse, and that's the challenge. But the good news is there's quite a bit more attention from the government. There's better experts at the HHS and CyberScoop at the DHS who are kind of following up on this, and there's also good Samaritans, people in the InfoSec community who aren't necessarily all the time focused on health sector, but obviously want to mitigate this issue right now.
Right, and that's a perfect segue, because one of the things that we do at Scythe is we look for adversary behaviors, right? So I saw a lot of IOCs, indicators of compromise. Of course, that's the first thing that hospitals are going to want to look at. And one of the things we've done working with HISAC, working with others that have provided this adversary behavior, is we've consumed that. So let me share my screen and show you what I mean by that. Cool. So one of the first things that we do, and as we mentioned, the IOCs were provided, which is great. But one of the things that we want to look at for is the adversary behaviors, or the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures. So what we've done is every Threat Thursday, we choose a particular adversary, and we'll talk about some of the other ones now. But we try to extract those procedures and map them back to MITRE ATT&CK, which is an area where we think cyber threat intelligence could do better. Obviously, IOCs are important, but also knowing the behavior and the exact procedures that these adversaries do. So by mapping it here and understanding procedures, we can then create these threats. And like you said, slothful media was one, US CERT was provided. It's a report. We looked at the report, no mapping to MITRE ATT&CK, but how can we emulate this? Because our whole thing is, if we emulate what the bad guys are doing, we can test ourselves, and then we can create detections around that. So for this one, we did Ryuk. just want to show you what we do with the information that you put out there. We know that they communicate over HTTPS, and then we created these steps. These steps are going to be automated. So we create first an encryption key. As you mentioned, one of the last things they do is the ransomware. Then everything loads into memory. What we want to do to be safe and to be able to test this in a production environment, and in particular in hospitals, we are offering our platform for free to anyone in the hospital and healthcare sector so that they can test themselves. We create a new folder because we're not going to want to ransom real data or really modify anything on the target system. So you can see here we've created new folders, and then we've gone through and done a lot of the things that Ryuk does, like creating scheduled tasks, executing those scheduled tasks, running PowerShell, doing some persistence by adding registry keys. And then we saw, and like you mentioned, the multi-day work, right? So we broke this down into 2 days. Day one, it's going to gain a lot of information using things like AD Find, which is a tool that is available. A lot of people use it, but this particular threat actor has used it as well to gain information about Active Directory. So we've done exactly the same thing. The threat intelligence provided said they run netview/all/domain. They run NL tests, right? They run AD trust, all right? They do all of these. And this is exactly what we're doing, and dumping the same files onto the system where we're on. And then we give it a delay. We can actually wait an entire day, but for the purposes of this demo, right, we're waiting 10 seconds, and then do that second part where they begin doing exfiltration all the way down to where we actually do a ransom. Now, the ransom, as I mentioned, we create new files, and then we ransom there. We have the ability of exfiltrating it if that's something that they want to test. And then at the end, we clean up after ourselves. So this from the perspective of the operator. They double click this new file we created, so it's not getting caught by antivirus. You don't see anything, but then we do things where you see it. Normal Ryuk attack, you wouldn't see anything until the end, right? Here we're creating this folder. And as it goes through the automation, it's launching new processes. It's copying the same files that they're using, all touching disk. Here you can see all of these files being done. And at the end, all this takes time, right? It's obviously a sped up video, but pretty much every 10 seconds, the ransomware, in case this synthetic malware is calling out and running. One of the things that we believe in is showing the defenders what is actually happening. So we got the threat intelligence. This is the operator view. This is the red team view. It got executed as you saw previously. Now it's going through step by step, doing each of these, creating the scheduled tasks, going through. So if you do have detective controls, you're actually doing this on the target system in a safe manner to then be a little better prepared and hopefully create detections around this, because a lot of organizations are buying security tools, they're plugging them in, and they think that it's just going to work. But we all know that that's not the case. You actually have to figure out what's good behavior and what's bad behavior. And in this case, we have this platform. And now, thanks to all the cyber threat intelligence on Ryuk, we have the ability to emulate just exactly the attacks that they've done against others in your environment in a safe manner. Thank you so much for being here and giving us some information. Where can any of the viewers find you if they want to read your articles, or you mentioned Twitter as well? What's your handle and where can we find you?
Right. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I'm on Twitter at SNLYNGAAS. A little bit of a mouthful, but all our stories are on cyberscoop.com, and I encourage you to follow us on Twitter as well. It's at CyberScoop News.
Awesome. Thank you. I will link to that on the post. And thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate your journalism, and keep up the good work.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
You too.